Welcome back, everyone. The Conversation's Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. For a radio audience tuning in at WYAD 94.1 FM and WYADonline.com, we're glad that you all can be back with us. Also tuning in online worldwide via our podcast at iHeartRadio and Amazon Music. We're glad you all could be with us as well. I was just saying to our next guest, it's hard to believe it was 2013 the last time we had New York Times bestselling author Christopher Rice on the broadcast. At the time, he was discussing his book, The Heavens Rise. He's out with a new book, though, writing a C. Travis Rice. You guys are going to really enjoy it. If you guys have been following the Sapphire series, you're going to really enjoy Sapphire Dawn. Even if you haven't read the other books, though, this is a great book for you to be able to start with. I want to talk to Christopher not only about the success of the series, but what it's been like for him to bring these characters to life and to see the response to them. Christopher, thank you again for spending some time with us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, especially given that I have neglected you for so many years, apparently. 2013, that is too long.
Well, Christopher, you've been quite busy, so I totally understand that. So no hard feelings there. I want to begin there, though, Christopher, because the great thing about you is, whether, of course, people are enjoying the Sapphire series, of course, we can get into Sapphire Dawn, but you've been able to write books in different genres and kind of bring in different readers. What has that been like for you to be able to play in these different sandboxes and to be able to write the stories that you enjoy writing?
Well, it's been wonderful. It's an incredible blessing, and I think some of it, this specific series, the Sapphire Cove series, that was made possible by revolutions in digital publishing, because I think what we saw in around not too long after the last time I talked to you, we were seeing a very controversial sea change in the industry, but the bright side of what ebooks have ushered in is that there were certain publishers, independent publishers, that were able to take risks on new types of stories, more diverse types of stories, because they didn't have to worry about the overhead of shipping books, literally, to stores.
Yeah.
And, there's a downside. I love bookstores. I love all of this. But there was a flowering of LGBT romance presses in that period. Ironically, Blue Box, which published these books, is not specifically an LGBT romance press. I'm sort of their queer male author, but they were able to give established authors opportunities to pursue kind of their dream project that maybe a more traditional New York publisher was not going to roll the dice on. They very clearly did that with a book called From Blood and Ash by Jennifer Armentrout, which has gone on to be one of the most top-selling titles of the last few years. That was a high fantasy from a very established author who was not known for doing high fantasy. So I have to credit some of the changes in the industry for that. But for me personally, it's been really enriching and rewarding because I get bored. If I just do the same thing over and over again, I'm going to get bored. Who wouldn't?
Yeah. Well, I think anyone who's read the Sapphire series, the Sapphire Cove series, Christopher, they will definitely be able, of course, to tell your love of storytelling, your love of really developing these characters, letting us know who they are. But how did the series initially come to you?
Well, I was driving all my friends crazy talking about, was I going to write a gay romance series? I had written a lot of diverse books. I had thrillers that had major gay characters. I had thrillers that had major straight female characters. I had never done a love story with a happy ending between two men who were like me and loved like me. And it was becoming increasingly popular, the genre was. I was watching authors like Casey McQuiston and Alexis Hall break out. Alexis Hall is someone who had been around forever, very well respected, critically acclaimed, but didn't really get their moment in the sun until about a few years ago with their book Boyfriend Material. So it was happening, and I was like, am I missing out on this? Because this is always something I've really wanted to do. But I was always getting paid to do something else. So finally, what really the short version is it was the pandemic. The pandemic when I was trapped at home, and I had the afternoons and the evenings entirely to myself and a desperate need to be cheered up. I opened up this notes file, because I've always got a notes file full of ideas. I don't know if I'm going to do any of them, but, and there was this idea about this posh Southern California resort and this romance between the general manager and the security director, and it just took over. It took over the second half of my days during lockdown.
Wow, amazing. And now we have Sapphire Dawn. And what is so interesting about this, and I appreciate you giving us the backstory here, Christopher, but I think what's so interesting is that I think everyone can find something about Sapphire Dawn, and it's true with other books in the series too, but definitely with this book they can relate to. They all know what it's like to trust your feelings, also, of course, going through hurt and heartbreak, but also, trying to make sure that you're able to establish yourself, your own confidence and self-worth. What was that like for you to play with in this love story, that these individuals were not only, of course, dealing with their feelings toward each other, but also their feelings about themselves?
The type of romance novels that I write, when I am writing a romance novel, is if I follow a formula, it's that my main characters have something about their past that they either need to get over, work through, or see in a new and more mature way. And if they don't do that, they're not going to be freed up to be with the person that's really right for them. So I like character-driven romance stories where people need to sort of get over themselves, for lack of a better term, to free themselves up for someone who really wants to love them and support them. And I think you're right. I think that is a universal storyline. It doesn't matter if it's two men or two women or two trans people. Like, it is ultimately about seeing yourself as being deserving of love, which a lot of people don't. I think we tell ourselves, we're deserving if we ... We're deserving if we have a certain income. We're deserving if we repress certain aspects of our personality that make us, quote unquote, high maintenance or extra, as the kids say. And I love to write stories in which the person finally comes along for the other person, who's like, I love you exactly as you are, but you need to not throw me away out of fear.
Yeah, I love that. There's a great line in the book, Christopher, I made a note of it because I thought it was so interesting. You were talking about, where your character, Donnie, was talking about the character, Logan, and the line in the book talking about Logan being ex-military, Donnie says, ex-military folks, they learn how to live inside chaos. I thought that was a really interesting line because I think a lot of your characters can relate to that. Trying to live inside the chaos of life. Talk to us about that and what it was like for you to have a character like Logan kind of dealing with what he was dealing with.
Well, I moved out to Southern California. I'm still mostly associated with New Orleans in people's minds, and I think there are a lot of reasons for that, pretty obvious reasons. But I've lived in Southern California now for almost 25 years. And when I got out here, I met a lot of military men for the first time. This is a big military state, especially down in San Diego. Around there, we've got Camp Pendleton. We've got a lot of Marine Corps bases, big Navy presence. So this was a different time for gay men and women in the military. We were living under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And I was really impressed with their ability to navigate both worlds, their sense of duty and obligation, and also their attempts to be true to themselves in a really challenging environment for that. And so I kind of began to write about them pretty steadily. I wrote a thriller called Blind Fall, which was really all about my encounters kind of with the Marine Corps in general, and very, very different from this book, sort of violent way. So I've always been taken with, I guess, what you would call the Marine Corps management style. And that's really what gave birth to the character of Logan. And I think the other thing that Donnie says is that Logan is really good at following orders, because that's how you very often contend with a chaotic environment in a military setting, right? We have a strict chain of command. We follow the rules because the rules are being made further above our rank, and by people who can preferably see the entire field, right? And we honor ourselves as playing a specific individual role in that. But what Logan needs to do in that book is man up and tell his fiancée what kind of wedding he wants. And that's really hard for him. That's really hard for him because he has to make the orders himself. And so that can be a fascinating transition for a character. But I think we all live inside chaos day in and day out. I think that every step we get to take, we should be grateful for, because the world is a very chaotic place. And I think that acceptance is the answer, right? My best friend, Eric Shaw Quinn, who I do my podcast with over at the Dinner Party Show, who's also my producing partner, he always says we have two choices each day when we wake up. Do we want to be happy with the day we're having or not? Because the day we're having is going to be the day we're having. We can't control the universe as much as we might try.
Right. Well, unless you're an author like you, then you can kind of just do what you want to do.
Absolutely. I'm the director. I'm the cinematographer. I'm all the cast. I'm all of it.
Right, right. Christopher, there is another point I wanted to bring up about Sapphire Dawn that I thought was interesting, and I alluded to it earlier, and that is the search inside, right? Because even though you've given them this idyllic place that these stories are set, talk about dealing with chaos, which is why I think that line was so interesting to me. There's a lot of internal struggle that takes place with these characters. Talk about that, how a lot of times what we see with people, even with people like Donnie, people who look like they have everything together, how what they're wrestling with inside. What has that been like for you to explore with these books?
The thing I love about this book is you're right. Like, the setting is this glossy candy coating on these really serious issues that are, some of which are specific to gay men and some of which are not, but they're still very serious. And, the second book in the series, Sapphire Spring, it deals with some really intense issues. It deals with a hero who is contending with substance abuse problems, who has lived as a closeted bisexual for years and is suffering, who needs to make right with the kid he bullied in high school, who's now a grown man like him. There's a lot of serious stuff there, even though it's surrounded by sun and palm trees. And that was intentional on my part, I think. Like, I wanted it almost, safe space is not the term I'm looking for, but I wanted this backdrop to almost seduce these characters into finally dealing with their issues so that they can have a better life. And I think that's very much what is part of it. But you're right that it's always fascinating to write people who present a different face to the world than their authentic one, because there's someplace for them to go as a character.
Yeah.
Right? You can,
exactly.
I think all good plots arise out of a character who is changing in response to challenges to their world or their worldview.
Well, Christopher, you've done it again. It's a great book and a great conversation. It was worth the decade wait to speak with you again. Hopefully, though, it won't be as long next time. But New York Times bestselling author Christopher Rice has been with us discussing his book written as C. Travis Rice, Sapphire Dawn. It is out now through our friends at Amazon.com. Of course, you can be able to get it there. And Christopher, how can our audience stay connected with you, man?
Well, I've got three big websites. We've got, as I said earlier, the podcast I do with my amazing co-host and best friend Eric Shaw Quinn is at thedinnerpartyshow.com, and we do new episodes every Sunday of our true crime-centric podcast, Christopher and Eric's True Crime TV Club. I've got a dedicated website for the Sapphire Cove series at visitsappphirecove.com. And then if people are curious about everything I've written in all its multi-genre diversity, that's at ChristopherRiceBooks.com.
All right. I love it. Again, Christopher, congratulations to you. Thank you again for stopping by and looking forward to our next chat together.
Thank you so much, Cyrus.
More than welcome. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live. Let us go make today amazing. Take care.